Random House Audible presents The Future of Spacetime, with essays by Stephen W. Hawking, Timothy Ferris, Igor Novikov, Alan Lightman, and Kip S. Thorne. Read for you by Jonathan Davis. Chronology Protection: Making the World Safe for Historians. Stephen W. Hawking. This essay will be about time travel, which has become an interest of Kip Thorne's as he has become older. Is this a coincidence? But to speculate openly about time travel is tricky. If the press picked up that the government was funding research into time travel, there would either be an outcry at the waste of public money or a demand that the research be classified for military purposes. After all, how could we protect ourselves if the Russians or Chinese had time travel and we didn't? They could bring back Comrades Stalin and Mao. So there are only a few of us who are foolhardy enough to work on a subject that is so politically incorrect, even in physics circles. We disguise what we are doing by using technical terms like closed time-like curves, which is just code for time travel. The first scientific description of time was given in 1689 by Sir Isaac Newton. Newton held the Lucasian chair at Cambridge that I now occupy, though it wasn't electrically operated in his time. In Newton's theory, time was absolute and marched on relentlessly. There was no turning back and returning to an earlier age. The situation changed, however, when Einstein formulated his general theory of relativity in 1915. Time was now linked with space in a new entity called spacetime. Spacetime was not an absolute fixed background in which events took place. Instead, space and time were made dynamic by the Einstein equations, which described how they were curved and distorted by the matter and energy in the universe. Time still increased locally, but there was now the possibility that spacetime could be warped so much that one could move on a path that would bring one back before one set out. A few years ago, the BBC made a film with Kip and me showing what this kind of time travel might be like. They used trick photography to depict wormholes, hypothetical tubes of space-time that might connect different regions of space and time. The idea is that you step into one mouth of the wormhole and step out of the other mouth into a different place and at a different time. Wormholes, if they exist, would be ideal for rapid space travel. You might go through a wormhole to the other side of the galaxy and be back in time for dinner. However, one can show that if wormholes exist, you could also use them to get back before you set out. One would then think you could do something like blowing up the rocket on its launch pad to prevent your setting out in the first place. This is a variation of the grandfather paradox. What happens to you if you go back in time and kill your grandfather before your father was conceived? Of course, this is a paradox only if you believe you have free will to do what you like when you go back in time. I'm not going to get into a philosophical discussion of free will in this essay. Instead, I shall concentrate on whether the laws of physics allow space-time to be so warped that a macroscopic body, like a spaceship, can return to its own past. According to Einstein's theory, a spaceship necessarily travels at less than the local speed of light, and it follows what is called a time-like curve through spacetime. Thus one can formulate the question in technical terms. Does spacetime admit time-like curves that are closed, that is, which return to their starting point again and again? There are three levels on which we can try to answer this question. The first is Einstein's general theory of relativity. This is what is called a classical theory. That is to say, it assumes the universe has a well-defined history without any uncertainty. For classical general relativity, we have a fairly complete picture, which I shall describe. We know, however, that classical theory can't be quite right, because we observe that matter in the universe is subject to fluctuations, and its behavior can't be predicted precisely. In the 1920s, a new paradigm called quantum theory was developed to describe these fluctuations, to quantify the uncertainty. We can therefore ask the question about time travel on a second level, called the semi-classical theory. In this, Quantum matter fields are considered on a classical spacetime background. Here the picture is less complete, but at least we have some idea how to proceed. Finally, there is the full quantum theory of gravity, whatever that may be. Here it is not clear even how to pose the question: is time travel possible? Maybe the best one can do is to ask how observers at infinity would interpret their measurements. Would they think that time travel had taken place in the interior of the spacetime? Let's start with the classical theory. Flat spacetime does not contain closed time-like curves, nor do other solutions of the Einstein equations that were known early on. It was therefore a great shock to Einstein when in 1949, Kurt Gödel, better known in mathematics for Gödel's theorem, discovered a solution that represented a universe full of rotating matter, with closed time-like curves through every point. Gödel's solution required a cosmological constant, which may or may not exist in nature, but other solutions were subsequently found without one. A particularly interesting case is two cosmic strings moving at high speed past each other. As their name suggests, cosmic strings are objects with length but a tiny cross-section. They are predicted to occur in some theories of elementary particles. The gravitational field of a single cosmic string is flat space with a wedge cut out, such that the sharp edge is at the string. Thus, if one goes in a circle around a cosmic string, the distance in space is less than one would expect, but time would not be affected. This means that the space-time around a single cosmic string does not contain any closed time-like curves. However, if there is a second cosmic string that is moving with respect to the first, the wedges cut out for each will shorten both spatial distances and time intervals. If the cosmic strings are moving at nearly the speed of light relative to each other, the saving of time in going around both strings can be so great that one would arrive back before one set out. In other words, there are closed time-like curves that one can follow to travel into the past. Cosmic string spacetime contains matter that has positive energy density and is physically reasonable. However, the warping that produces the closed time-like curves extends all the way out to infinity and back to the infinite past. Thus, these spacetimes were created with time travel in them. We have no reason to believe that our own universe was created in such a warped fashion, and we have no reliable evidence of visitors from the future. I'm discounting the conspiracy theory that UFOs are from the future and that the government knows and is covering it up. Their record of cover-ups is not that good. I shall therefore assume that there are no closed time-like curves to the past of some surface of constant time, S. The question is, then, could some advanced civilization build a time machine? That is, could that civilization modify the space-time to the future of S, so that closed time-like curves appear in a finite region? I say a finite region because, no matter how advanced the civilization becomes, it could presumably control only a finite part of the universe. In science, finding the right formulation of a problem is often the key to solving it, and this is a good example. To define what is meant by a finite time machine, I went back to some early work of mine. I had defined the future Cauchy development of S to be the set of points of spacetime where events are determined completely by what happens on S. In other words, it is the region of spacetime where every possible path that moves at less than the speed of light comes from S. However, if an advanced civilization manages to build a time machine, there will be a closed time-like curve C to the future of S. C will go around and around in the future of S, but it will not go back and intersect S. This means that points on C will not lie in the Cauchy development of S. Thus, S will have a Cauchy horizon H, a surface that is a future boundary to the Cauchy development of S. I had introduced the concept of a Cauchy horizon about the time I first met Kip Thorne, way back in prehistory, shortly after the arc. Cauchy horizons occur inside some black hole solutions, and in a solution that physicists call anti-de Sitter space. However, in these cases, the light rays that form the Cauchy horizon start either at infinity or at singularities. To create such a Cauchy horizon would require either being able to warp spacetime all.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?